What's up, guys? Irgor here again, and today I wanted to go over my personal highlights from the Secrets of the Atlas and Mercenaries of Charthus reveal we got on Friday, as well as from the patch notes that were dropped immediately afterwards. I'm just going to jump straight into it with the Secrets of the Atlas expansion. So it's been a little over 3 years, I think, since our last expansion of the endgame, and what they're adding is the Threads of Memory system, which is when you get to the Atlas in the endgame, sometimes there will be these tears in reality, and a character named Egan will show up, and he'll be able to collect some kind of energy out of these tears, and then he'll be able to, I believe they said once you hit tier 14 maps, you'll be able to have Egan use that energy to open well, first he puts Threads of Memories onto your Atlas, which highlights a few maps in a line together, and then he can open portals to those maps in order, and those maps will be influenced by Zana's memories, so the enemies inside will be empowered, and when you kill them, they have better loot because they're empowered, and they also give you certain kinds of energy depending on which memories are affecting that current map, and you use that energy to cast one of 3 abilities depending on the memories. You have the Memory of Disbelief, which causes affected enemies to not drop equipment items, but they still drop currency in maps, so it makes it easier for you to target those more valuable drops. Then there's the Memory of Panic, which causes all affected monsters to revive immediately after death, and they do drop loot a second time, and they give XP a second time, so it's essentially double the loot and XP. And finally, there's the Memory of Impatience, which causes all surrounding enemies to give you souls, making you much stronger. I'm going to assume it functions like the Soul Eater system that we already have in the game, which can make your character pretty powerful. And as you get into the higher tiers, those memory maps can be affected by multiple memories. So you can have multiple abilities available. You can even have all 3 on certain maps, and enemies can be affected by all 3 abilities. So you can like super juice yourself with souls and then put the 2 debuffs on them and get to double kill enemies that will only drop currency. So you can really juice your loot like that. So that's a pretty interesting interaction for the system. Defeating the boss of each memory map will spawn an altar, similar to the altars that like the Eater of Worlds and the other one, I forget what the other one's name is, it's been so long. Similar to the altars that they spawn randomly in their influenced maps, it has 2 choices, and it's a choice between 2 different modifiers that will affect the rest of the memory maps in the current thread, and they do stack, so every map you add more and more modifiers and more loot to the following maps in the thread. And then once you get to the last map in the thread, it will have a special boss that is like an augmented version of a bunch of different bosses that we've seen over the years. 2 of the notable ones they showed was Cirrus and Innocence as boss options, and they said that they will be empowered and they will have new abilities as well. So that's pretty interesting. And when you kill those bosses, it will allow you to delve deeper into the memory rifts, and eventually, as you get deeper and deeper and keep killing those augmented specialized bosses, they will have a chance to drop map fragments. There's 3 map fragments, and each one is associated with one of the 3 new pinnacle bosses. There's the Incarnation of Dread, the Incarnation of Fear, and the Incarnation of Neglect. Each of these new pinnacle bosses have their own new uniques to drop, and after you defeat all 3 of them, you'll be able to start dropping memory-influenced tier 16 maps, which have the ability to have modifiers that are normally exclusive to tier 17 maps on them, as well as being influenced by Zana's memories, which will give you access to those memory abilities like the memory threads do. The final big aspect of this endgame rework is memory strands, which is, it's kind of like Forging Potential in Last Epoch if you've played that game. Essentially the way it works is when items drop from a memory influenced map, it might be able to drop elsewhere as well, but I'm not sure. But it definitely can drop from memory influenced maps. There's a chance for them to roll with memory strands up to 100. 100 memory strands is the max any item can have. And the way memory strands work is when you identify the item, the modifiers that you get will be higher tier proportional to how high the level of memory strands are on the item. And then when you use a crafting orb on the item, the orb will consume some of the memory strands to make the results from the craft more powerful. And the power that you get from that craft is proportional to the amount of memory strands that's on the item. So this is a pretty cool system. This is a very interesting way to kind of enhance your crafting. It's not really like a new way of crafting so much as it's just going to make crafting that you do anyway stronger, so you're going to get better results. So it's kind of like a damper to RNG in some ways, which is cool. I think that's a really good addition to the game, especially because we know it's evergreen, because Secrets of the Atlas is new endgame. It's an expansion to the game. It's not associated with the Challenge League, so it's immediately core. And speaking of the Challenge League is going to be the Mercenaries of Trarthus, which I was pretty surprised by, but I'm looking forward to checking it out. I didn't honestly think we'd ever get Mercenaries in Path of Exile, but I'm not upset to see them, especially in this iteration. The way they're implementing mercenaries seems really cool. So the way they work is you will encounter mercenaries in each zone of the campaign, as well as every map you enter on the Atlas. And when you approach them, they'll challenge you to a duel. You'll be able to check their inventory, see what kind of gear they've got equipped, and what they have in their bags, and what kind of spells and skills they have equipped, etc. You'll have 3 options for your rewards if you win the duel. You can either hire them so that they'll become your companion and follow you around and help you fight. You can have them give you one of their items of your choice, or you can exile them so that a mercenary of that archetype will not show up again for a certain number of encounters. The gear that the mercenaries are supposed to have seem to be pretty good. They said that they have them weighted in a way so that the idea is that the mercenaries are crafting their gear like we are, so they should have pretty decent pieces, things that we might actually want to take from them if we duel them and want to take an item, or things that would make them quite powerful as a companion for us. Speaking of using them as a companion, they will count as half a player. So for the purposes of loot, you will get more loot equivalent to half of a player. So there's a lot of benefit just simply from that, from having them in your group, but they do increase the health of bosses equivalent to half a player. So that is something to keep in mind. But as long as it's a good mercenary, it should be more than enough to make up for that. Sometimes when you encounter a mercenary, there'll be a special infamous mercenary with a special name, the name of their house associated with them. And these infamous mercenaries have a chance to have items on them with unique infamous modifiers that are new modifiers, and this is the only way you can get them. So when you see an infamous mercenary, you'll definitely want to make a point to at least check their inventory to see if there's anything really good, because some of the new modifiers are probably going to be pretty interesting. There's also special new Trarthus transfigured gems that you can only get from mercenaries. They have a chance to have them in their pockets. They only showed one, which was Siege Ballista of Trarthus, and it looked like the way it worked is it just put 4 Siege Ballistas on the ground in like a cross symbol, a cross pattern, all pointing into each other, and then they shoot and despawn. So it's like kind of like a shotgun burst, just not forward in a cone. It looks interesting, but those are definitely going to be things to keep an eye out for the mercenaries as well. There will probably be some pretty powerful ones. They said that we'll only be able to have one mercenary with us at a time, but every player in a group will be able to have their own mercenary, and you can have up to 3 hired at any given time, and the 2 that aren't accompanying you will wait for you in town until you tell them to go with you. The mercenaries also don't level with you, so you will eventually have to fire them and replace them so that they can keep up with your progress. Also, you are able to put items that you have onto them to make them more powerful in that way. So if you get a really good mercenary with like really good auras that you want to keep, you can at least give them items to make them a little bit stronger as you go, so that they can keep up. So you can you can keep them effective a bit longer, but eventually they will get out leveled and then you'll have to replace them. I think this system's very interesting. Like I said before, I did not expect like a mercenary companion system in this game. But I think especially as a challenge league where if it doesn't go over well, they can just get rid of it in the next patch. I think that this is a really good way to check stuff out like this. And I'm really looking forward to trying it out. I think it's going to be very interesting. I think we're going to start seeing people playing Orabot characters by themselves with just their mercenary and getting like one of the mercenary archetypes that's like all about doing damage and stuff, and just trying to Orabot the mercenary and see if they can kill like uber bosses with just their mercenaries doing all the damage. That would be kind of cool to see people be able to do. Now that's all the major mechanical stuff for new content. We are getting a betrayal rework, which mostly boils down to we don't have to go to Jund to unveil items anymore. You can just right click them wherever you get them to unveil them now. You don't have to unveil certain modifiers to unlock the crafting recipe for that modifier. Now they are all in maps right outside of boss rooms, just like regular recipes are. Katarina is now kind of partially split from the rest of the syndicate in that she now, in order to fight her, you have to get a map fragment, which can drop from the leaders of the syndicate hideouts when you kill them. And when you kill her, it does not reset your syndicate anymore. So now you can set up like the perfect syndicate for what you're trying to farm and farm it, and you can still go kill Katarina whenever you get a fragment to drop for a little extra loot from her in case you get something good, and you don't have to worry about resetting your syndicate. She's also getting all flame embers are coming back from Necropolis and being added to her drop pool. These kind of work similarly to scarabs in that you put them into the map device to affect the map that you're going into. They have very unique and fairly powerful effects. We haven't seen many of them, so we're just gonna have to see what winds up dropping and seeing what has been added, but they will probably be interesting and probably very good. Veiled Chaos Orbs are back, and Veiled Orbs are being renamed to Veiled Exalted Orbs so that it's not confusing. The rest is mostly like balance changes and some changes to like the way the Veiled modifiers work for Katarina's unique drops, which look really cool. We haven't really seen details on it, but it'll probably make the items a lot more powerful. The only other big thing that I think is really cool, one of the new timed crafting benches that they added is it's got a new Val Orb. It's not quite a Val Orb, I forget what it exactly was called, but I'll put it on screen so you can see it. And the way they said it works is you can corrupt uniques multiple times, and they can have, I think they said up to 3 times on one unique you can corrupt it, and you have the ability to add up to 2 corrupted implicits onto an item. And this special Val Orb also has a lower chance to brick the item, but it can still brick it. So this is like a bit more similar to the way the Val Orb works in PoE 2, which is kind of cool because I like how the Val Orb works in PoE 2. It's not quite the same. I don't have like a full understanding of how the Val Orb works in PoE 2 because I haven't played that game enough to really understand it, but it does seem like it's like more towards that. They were probably inspired by the PoE 2 Val Orb, but I think that's a really good addition to the mechanic. We got a few new skills and a few new items. We got the focused channeling support, which is just supports channeling spells you cast yourself, empowering them and making them cost more the longer you channel the spell. It's an int dex support. I think this was a support in PoE 2 and they are bringing it over, which is cool. We're also getting Shapers and Elders Exalted Orbs. So now with that, we've got Exalted Orbs for all of the influence categories, which is really cool. They also said that now that we have that, they added a unique item that they just kind of teased. They didn't show what it does at all, but they said it interacts with these influence exalted orbs in some strange way. So that's pretty intriguing. I kind of have a feeling that it might be like some kind of unique like helmet or something, because it was pretty small. Because they showed a silhouette of the item and it was pretty small. So I have a feeling it's one of the smaller slots, maybe a helmet or gloves or boots, one of those. I think the way it's gonna work is you're gonna be able to put one of every influence on it. And if that's the case, that's insane. They might not do that because that sounds really like insanely powerful, but that would be really cool. That would definitely be really, really cool. But we'll just have to see once someone gets it to drop. Then we also have 3 new orbs associated with the new memory strand system. We've got the Orb of Remembrance, which just adds a random amount of memory strands to a normal item. It can be used on a normal item that already has memory strands, or it can be used on one that doesn't have any to add some to it. And it's just a random amount. The Orb of Unraveling consumes all of the memory strands on an item to attempt to upgrade the tiers of the modifiers on the item, and the amount you get upgraded is based on how many strands were consumed by the orb. And then the last one is the Orb of Intention, which modifies a memory influenced map, causing items found to have more memory strands but fewer items drop in total. So you won't get as much loot, but there's a good chance that a lot of the loot you do get will have memory strands on it. And then outside of those crafting orbs, there's going to be 5 new divination cards, 20 new uniques. Some of them are only from the mercenaries, some of them are only from the new pinnacle bosses. One of them that they showed was the Starcaller Abyssal Axe, which looks pretty cool. It's got a baked in ability called Star Call. It's a level 20 ability that like brings down meteors around you. It looks pretty cool, and it looks like it does pretty good damage. And the axe has the ability to, it has a chance on crit to cast Star Call. So you could essentially build around Star Call instead of like Ice Nova or something. You could have Star Call be your main damage ability, which would let you drop cast on crit from your 6 link and put another damage node in and essentially have a 7 link cast on crit build, which could be really cool. Otherwise, you could still just do your usual setup for your whatever your favorite flavor of cast on crit is, and then you'll just have the Starcaller damage on top of it as well, which is still pretty good. Then the other unique they showed off was the Wine of the Prophet Gold Flask, which when you drink it, you draw a random divination card above your head, and based on which card you drew, it gives you a buff. And there's a ton of buffs, they said. They only showed a couple. One of them was like a movement speed buff. But the other one, if you draw the Doctor, you get a mini headhunter effect, which is really cool. That's like really powerful. So it seems like there's probably a pretty wide range of the power level of the buffs you can get from it. I think that'll be not necessarily the strongest item in the world, but it's going to be a very fun item. It's one of those items where sometimes you press it and you just completely pop off, and that's always fun. That's always a lot of fun. So I'm definitely hoping to check that item out as well. Settlers is going core. You'll get access to King's March once you reach the end game. The town is already going to be completely built, so you don't have to do any of the building. You still have access to the farm to farm crops. You will still get ore deposits that spawn in your zones, and you can collect the ore from those. You use the ore and the crops to ship from the shipyard like before. Now with the shipyard, you can only ship to Karui ports and Kalgurin ports. When you ship to Kalgurin ports, you get both currency and rune grafts. When you ship to Karui ports, you get currency and tattoos. Tattoos work the same as they did in Settlers. I'm sure there were probably some balance adjustments, but overall they'll work the same way they did before. Rune grafts work similarly to tattoos, but instead of replacing small passives on your tree, they replace mastery passives on your tree. And they are various effects from the rune enchanting system in Settlers. I'm sure there's also some new ones that were added for the rune grafting system, and I'm sure a lot of the more powerful ones have been nerfed or not even added at all, but it's essentially the replacement system for the rune enchanting system. And then the map device is still in. They didn't seem to say anything about the map device being nerfed in any way, so I'm not sure how that's going to go, but the map device was quite powerful in Settlers, so we'll see. And then the Recombinator is still in. It has the old version from Settlers available, but there's also a button you can press to switch it to the PoE2 recombination, which I've never really interacted with either system that much, so I can't give that much of an opinion on it. I know people like Zizarin that have significantly more experience with it than I do. He seems to think that the Settlers version of the Recombinator is extremely powerful, but it's extremely RNG and kind of forces you to hoard a lot of loot that you can just kind of hurl into the Recombinator. So that just depends on the individual player whether or not they like that. And then the PoE2 version that you can choose as an alternative is significantly less RNG because you can like pick which modifiers it tries to combine, but it has a lot less power as a potential outcome. So it kind of depends on if you want more RNG but more power, but also you have to hoard way more loot as well, which to some people will be annoying. I'm not really sure which I prefer. I'll have to figure that out this league. But for King's March, that's pretty much everything. They're keeping gold in, which is good. They're keeping it in so that we can still use the gold respecking for the passive tree, which will be available from the beginning of the game. There will be an NPC for it in every Act town. And then Faustus will be available from Act 6 and onwards. He'll give you access to the currency exchange, which still uses gold as well. So that's really good. I'm glad they're keeping the currency exchange. It was pretty much guaranteed that they were going to keep the gold respec because it was insanely popular. And I'm not that surprised that the currency exchange is being kept because it was also pretty damn popular. And I'm really glad they are. I don't usually play trade, but if I do play trade, I'll definitely use the currency exchange a lot because it's very convenient. A few other pretty notable changes that aren't like crazy, but they're definitely very nice. Breach shards, when you do a breach encounter, instead of breach shards dropping during the encounter and you have to try and click on them while still pushing out the circle to kill as many things as you can, they're not going to drop visibly anymore. They'll collect up, and then when the breach encounter ends, they all drop together in a pile at the end, so you can then just scoop them up. So that's great because now you can mostly focus on just killing as many breach monsters as possible until the encounter ends. And then the other one is you can now use Orbs of Horizon on Guardian maps, so like Elder Guardians, Shaper Guardians, Conqueror maps, to re-roll which Guardian or Conqueror is in the map. So if you just need one more, like if you just need one of the Conquerors and none of your Conqueror maps are dropping with that Conqueror, you can also try Orb of Horizoning them to get the one you need. So it just gives you more opportunities to hopefully get the one you need so that you can fight Cirrus. There were a lot of skill and support gem balance changes that were in the patch notes. It's not like one of the bigger patch notes. In fact, it's one of the smaller patch notes. But there were still quite a few skills and supports getting rebalanced. I'm just gonna go over the stuff that's kind of like interesting to me. So like the big one that everyone's gonna be talking about is animated guardians no longer drop items when they die. They just can't be resummoned in the area. So pretty much every build is gonna have an animated guardian now, unless you really just don't care about free damage, because now you can that'll just give you 2 characters to gear now. You gear your main character and you gear your animate guardian, and it's just extra damage essentially. So that's really, really good. Like I said, pretty much any build is going to use it. And then the one I'm really interested in is Spellslinger's reservation efficiency has been buffed back to 20%, which is what it originally was when Spellslinger was added to the game. However, it's still not quite as good as it was back then because, well, for one thing, I think there's less reservation on the passive tree now than there was back then, but also the spells, when you trigger them with Spellslinger, they spend their mana cost. So you have the reservation and you have the mana cost. I think that's going to be so it's still weaker than it was back in the day. That's okay. I think this is going to make things work a lot better for Spellslinger. I love the Spellslinger playstyle. And they also added a new wand mastery that gives you 25% increased mana reservation efficiency for skills that are supported by Spellslinger. So that helps a lot too. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the Spellslinger changes. Hopefully it'll feel pretty good. I'm gonna try and figure out some kind of Spellslinger build for League Starter. If I don't find any like videos of people trying to put together a League Starter, I'll try and figure out one for myself. I'm not really great at making builds. Every league I try to make a build as my first character and I take it as far as I can. And then once I hit a wall, I'll usually look someone else's build up for a League Starter and just play that, and then I'll blast past the wall and do other stuff. I know technically what I should do is I should sit down and try and figure out how to make that build more efficient so I can get past the wall. I just don't usually have the patience to do that, so that's the cycle I usually go through every week. I'm also kind of interested in Essence Drain and Contagion getting buffs. That's kind of cool. Same with Exsanguinate. Exsanguinate got a small buff. I like Exsanguinate as a spell. That was like the OG spell slinger that I did, was Reap, Exsanguinate, and Wave of Conviction, and a few other things. I think there was like Arc in there. Also, Frostblades and Lightning Strike obviously got nerfed. Those were both really powerful last league. I'm sure there were other abilities that were also really powerful and got nerfed, but those were the ones that I knew a lot of people were playing, so I checked for those and they did get nerfed quite a bit. I'm sure they'll probably still be pretty powerful though. And also, Arcane Surge now provides 30% increased mana regeneration and 20% increased cast speed at all gem levels instead of scaling, so that's a very nice buff to Arcane Surge. They also buffed the spell damage it adds to the supported skill as well, which is always nice. A few of the ascendancies got some buffs and changes and reworks and stuff. They brought back a few of the Legacy of Frisia notables that were really popular. For example, Berserker is getting the Ancestral Echo notable that the Ancestral Commander had in Frisia, which is the one that makes it so that your strike skills will also attack the previous place you cast your strike skill. So that's really good. On top of that, the Berserker also got a couple of notable reworks, or one notable rework and a couple of new notables. One of the new ones is the Ancestral Echoes. It's got a different name, but it's essentially the same node. Also, Saboteur got Shrapnel Specialist as a new notable, which is a carbon copy of the Directionless notable from the Blind Prophet in Legacy of Frisia. That's the one that gives your projectiles a 50% chance to return to you, but your projectiles fire in random directions. I never did a build with that, but I know it was extremely popular, and it's pretty good. You just pick an ability that does a lot of projectile damage, and then you make it so that you have tons of projectiles, and then because they go in random directions, they just go over your whole screen and then they come back and they do a billion damage. It doesn't really matter that they're going in random directions. In fact, you can kind of use that to your advantage and just get more screen coverage. And then the other Frisia node that's coming back is for the Elementalist. It's one of the Herald nodes. It's not like a one-to-one node from Herald is being added to Elementalist. It's more the theming of how Herald is kind of focused on using the Herald auras. And it's just with this node, the Elementalist gets 66% increased mana reservation of Herald and 66% increased buff effect of Heralds. So it incentivizes using Heralds and makes them very powerful and very easy to fit multiple of them, like the Herald did in Frisia. And then one of the really notable changes coming to other ascendancies is Guardian is getting a node that gives 50% increased mana reservation efficiency, which is huge for aura stacking or spellslinger stacking. That might make Guardian like a kind of interesting spellslinger option. I'm gonna be thinking about that, and we'll see how that goes. And then Champion's Fortitude node. Now, instead of giving you 15 fortitude at all times, it's going to give you your maximum fortitude at all times, which is really good. And then Worthy Foe now causes you to taunt things on hit, which is also really good. And then the rest of the Ascendancy changes are pretty good, but they're not really worth talking about too much. They're mostly just like numbers changes. Trickster got nerfed because it's kind of the go-to Ascendancy for a lot of builds right now because it's so strong. And then that's most of the stuff. We've got some really nice quality of life stuff coming, like pause. Pause is it's a big deal that pause is getting added to PoE. It's going to function just like it does in PoE 2. You can hit the escape menu and it'll pause the game, or if you open a full screen user interface like the passive skill tree, it'll pause the game. But if you're in a Pinnacle boss battle, and I think some other boss battles as well, they will put a debuff on you that prevents you from pausing. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. And then other than that, there's not a ton of stuff. Like, there's a lot here, but it's not anything really crazy that I find worth noting. I've got a note here for Ralakesh's Impatience. They changed it so that instead of having one piece of Ralakesh's Impatience be able to just randomly pick one of the charges to give you max of, it's when it drops, it picks one of the charge types, and that's what the item gives you. So like, you can have a Ralakesh's Impatience that every X number of seconds gives you maximum frenzy charges, or it could drop in its X number of seconds gives you max power charges, and then obviously also for endurance charges. So that's a pretty big nerf to the item. To kind of balance that out a little bit, they put movement speed back onto the item, and they put immunity to corrupted blood on it as well, which is... It's nice to have the movement speed. Ralakesh's Impatience is still going to be really good, I think, but it's definitely a lot weaker now, because now you have to get one to drop that actually uses the charges you want for your build. I mean, every charge is good for almost every build, but yeah, that's definitely still regardless a big nerf. And then another quality of life thing is they made it so that if you enter a map that has a Nameless Seer or a Reflective Mist in it, a little message will pop up in your chat box so that you know to scour every inch of the map and look for those. So now we just have to build the muscle memory of glancing at our chat box real quick whenever we enter a map, just to see if that message pops up. And then if it doesn't, then we know we don't have to scour every inch of the map. I think most people haven't really bothered scouring every inch of every map anyways, because those things are so rare. But it does feel, you do have that little worm in the back of your brain wondering if you've missed a Nameless Seer or a Reflective Mist in one of your maps, and you'll never know it. So we at least don't have to worry about that anymore, which is nice. But that's most of the stuff that I find worth highlighting here. Let me know if I missed anything that you guys would have liked to hear me talk about. I'm going to link the patch notes in the description, as well as my video going live reacting to the reveal. So if you want more details, you can find them in those two places. And I appreciate you guys watching. It means a lot to me. I really enjoy making these videos, so I am glad that you guys like to watch them. See you in the next one. Peace out.